Bonjour à toutes et à tous et bienvenue à Learn French with Likiza. In today's lesson, we are going to learn 20 sentences to talk about family in French. 20 phrases pour parler de la famille en français. But before I begin, please help me to get to 1,000 subscribers by hitting the subscribe button. Thank you. Phrase 1. Je rends visite à mes parents ce weekend. I am visiting my parents this weekend. In French, we use rendre visite when talking about visiting people, but visiter alone when talking about visiting places. Please note that the preposition à always comes after rendre visite. Phrase 2. Mes parents habitent à la campagne. My parents live in the countryside. There are two verbs in French, both which translate to live in English. And these verbs are habiter and vivre. Habiter specifically implies to reside or to inhabit a place, while vivre specifically implies how a person lives their life or their experience. Phrase 3. Nous sommes deux enfants dans ma famille. We are two children in my family. Dans is a preposition which means in. Hence, dans ma famille translates to in my family. Phrase 4. Je suis l'aîné d'une famille de 4 enfants. I am the eldest in a family of 4. In this case, l'aîné translates to the eldest. If you are talking about the eldest daughter, for example, you will say la fille aînée. And you can see that aîné agrees in gender with la fille. If you are talking about the eldest sons, you will say les fils aînés. And the eldest daughters will be les filles aînées. And you can see in these two cases that aîné is also agreeing in number with the nouns. Phrase 5. Je suis l'enfant du million. I am a middle child. L'enfant du million translates to the middle child. Phrase 6. Je suis la Benjamin de ma famille. I am the youngest in my family, or I am the youngest child in my family. If it was a male child, they would say je suis le Benjamin de ma famille. So in this case, Benjamin or Benjamin translates to the youngest child. But you can also use cadet or cadet to also mean the youngest child. And you can say something like je suis le cadet de ma famille if you're male, or you can say je suis la cadette de ma famille if you're female, to mean I am the youngest child in my family. Phrase 7. Nous avons été élevés par nos grands-parents. We were raised by our grandparents. In this sentence example, the expression être élevé, which means to be raised, is used. And the preposition par, which means by, follows this expression. Phrase 8. J'ai grandi avec mes frères et sœurs et mes parents dans le sud. I grew up with my siblings and my parents in the south. The verb grandir translates to grow up, and its past participle grandi is used in this sentence example. And here is the interesting bit. We don't necessarily have a word in French for siblings, so normally we say frère et sœur to mean siblings. However, la fratrie translates to a group of siblings, and you'll mostly find it used in formal settings or in documents. If you have made it this far in this video, I would like to bring you up to speed with my 30% discount unlimited offer for 3 courses in one, which will push you up to intermediate level of French with 120 hours of learning. And you can check out my pinned comment after you finish watching this video for details on what it entails and how to join. And drop me a like before I continue. Phrase 9. Mes proches se sont installés ici dans les années 50. My relatives settled here in the 50s. Mes proches in this case means my relatives. But here is the tricky part. Pay attention. If you are going to use parents with possessive adjectives or definite articles, it translates to parents. So, mes parents or les parents. But if you use parents with indefinite articles, for example, des parents, it translates to relatives. Or if you use parents without any accompanying article in documents where it normally appears, it also means relatives. But if this is still so confusing to you, you can just go with mes proches, which means relatives, my relatives in this case. S'installer is a verb which is pronominal, a pronominal verb that translates to settle in or to move in. In this sentence example, we are using s'installer in the past tense. So the auxiliary verb for pronominal verbs is usually être. And s'installer has to agree. Now the past participle of s'installer has to agree in gender and number with the subject, which is mes proches. Phrase 10. Mes parents sont à la retraite. My parents are retired. The expression être à la retraite translates to be retired. We now move on to talking about family if you're married. Phrase 11. Mon mari et moi sommes mariés depuis 10 ans. My husband and I have been married for 10 years. You can also replace mon mari with ma femme if you want to say my wife and I have been married for 10 years. Depuis, which translates to for or since in English, talks about an action which started in the past and is still ongoing, meaning we got married 10 years ago and are still married. So marier is a pronominal verb which means to get married. Ma femme travaille à l'hôpital. My wife works at the hospital. Travailler translates to work. And some French beginners understandably confuse travailler with to travel. But the verb for to travel in French is voyager. And you can still go a step further and say, elle est infirmière. She is a nurse. Now in French, we don't use an article when talking about professions like we do in English. Because in English, the article is a nurse. But in French, you'll just say, elle est infirmière. So the full sentence will be, ma femme travaille à l'hôpital, elle est infirmière. My wife works at the hospital. She is a nurse. Phrase 13. Mon mari a 48 ans. My husband is 48 years old. Now in French, we use avoir, which means to have, to talk about age, and not être, which means to be, as in English. And in this case, a is the third person singular form of avoir. A with accent aigu is a preposition of place, which can either mean in, at, or to, depending on context. Phrase 14. J'ai 3 enfants. I have 3 children. One other use of the verb avoir is to talk about possession, or what you have, as in children. Phrase 15. Ma fille s'appelle Caroline. My daughter is called Caroline. S'appeler is a pronominal verb which means to call oneself and is used in giving names during introductions. Appeler, on the other hand, simply means to call, like on the telephone, to call someone. Phrase 16. Mon fils est au lycée. My son is in high school. Lycée means high school. École primaire means primary school or elementary school. And école maternelle means kindergarten or nursery school. Phrase 17. Mes enfants parlent 2 langues. My children speak 2 languages. Or you can say, mes enfants sont multilingues. My children are multilingual, meaning they speak several languages fluently. Bilingue means somebody can speak 2 languages fluently. Phrase 18. Nous partons en vacances en famille 1 fois par an. We go on holidays as a family, or we go on holiday as a family once every year. Partir is a verb which translates to leave or to go. En famille means as a family. And 1 fois is an adverb of time which means once. Hence the expression 1 fois par an translates to once every year. Phrase 19. Nous avons 2 chiens. Or, nous avons un chien et un chat. We have 2 dogs, or we have a dog and a cat. And this is when you're talking about owning pets as a family. And finally, phrase 20. Nous avons la chance d'avoir une jolie maison avec un grand jardin. We are lucky to have a nice house with a big garden. Avoir de la chance is an expression in French which means to be lucky. And pay attention. Most adjectives come after the nouns in French. But if you look at this sentence example, both adjectives used, joli and grand, come before the nouns like in English. And this is because adjectives in French describing beauty, age, number, goodness, and size always come before the noun, like English. Et voilà, c'est la fin de la leçon. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. You can also put your thoughts about the video in comments. And in my pinned comment, you're going to find all the relevant links. On Patreon, I've put a list of all the sentences that we have learned today in my latest post, which is free for all. So you can head on over there to see the list of sentences. A bientôt!